Okay, this is Communication Assessments for Individuals with Complex Communication Needs, Part 2, the video examples. So we have 4 specific elements of our observation that we want to think about. The first one is the students' communicative forms. So what is it exactly that they're doing, or what do you observe in terms of their actions? What does it look like? And that can be pre-verbal or verbal forms of communication. We also want to then look at what is the function of that action. So what is the purpose that it serves for the student? And then we do want to consider the partner's contributions, whether they're facilitative or inhibitive, or positive or negative. And then also the environmental contributions, what sort of is supportive and what might be negative. Okay, so let's look at some of the pre-verbal forms of communicating, or nonverbal forms. This is taken from the Checklist of Communicative Functions and Means by Amy Weatherby, and you can download that through the connectability webpage, which is on your assessment tools handout. But I thought it was just important to take a look at the range of actions, physical actions, that would be considered communicative. And there's some examples here, but this will sort of set us up for our observations of the videos, that basically even very small nuances of movement can have meaning depending on how the individual is using those and in what context. So just take a look there at the pointing and the shifting of eyes and even proximity, so moving closer to things, using self-injury or aggression is also communicative, those types of things. In terms of the functions of communication, this information was taken from the online communication matrix, and not so important that you know all of those little subtitles, although if you're a speech pathologist and you're using this information to write up an assessment, you'd want to be familiar with what those represent, and you can go to the website to get that information. But I just wanted you to see that there are sort of 4 main categories that Charity Rowland uses for the communicative functions: the reject, request, social, and information exchange. And those are the ones that we're going to use to look at our videos today to kind of make it simple. So there you can see there's just the 4 main functions. So here we have the chart that you can use for observing a video, and quite honestly, you could use this just observing a child, and it might be referred to in some places as a communication dictionary. There are 3 columns. In the first column, we look at exactly what the child does, so just describing what you observed. And then in the second column, there's a space for what you think it means. So if you were to put those actions into words from the perspective of the child, what do you think they're saying? And sometimes you may have more than one interpretation, sort of variations on a theme. And then the last column is, what function do you think it served? So what was the purpose of that message that you identified? And I have those 4 areas outlined. What we'll do is I will play a video clip. Most of them are very short, in a matter of just a couple of seconds. And I'll play it once, and then I will play it again, and then I will move on to a slide which fills in this information. So for the live webinar, I will pause for a minute between those 2 slides so that you can answer these questions yourself, kind of walk through and say, what did I see? What do I think the message was? And which of these 4 functions do I think it represents? If you're watching this in the recorded form, it will move through and quickly, so you'll want. So let's view this for the first time, and we're going to view this without any sound so you can focus on just watching the child. And I'll show that to you one more time. So what I observed was that Sam was pulling on the stick, the mallet there, and I would interpret that to mean I want it or give me the stick, and that it served the function of requesting. So here's our next video. See what you think, what you see, and what message you think this child is expressing. Okay, so what I saw was this little girl pulling away from her mom, sitting on the ground, and I interpreted that to mean I don't want to go inside. The video did indicate that that was where they were trying to go, but it could just be I don't want to go, and that the function was rejection or not wanting to do something. Okay, so take a look at Cole and see what you see and what message you think he's expressing and what function. So I saw that he waved, and I thought he was waving as hello or greeting, and I would say that is a social function. So I'm hoping that this is making sense, that we're taking actions, which sometimes, like in this case, are more clear than others, and we're explicating or externalizing our interpretation of what they mean based on the context and what we know about the child. And then we're assigning a function to that. And that's going to help us, particularly when we get to that more detailed list that you saw on one of those early slides, to know what functions does the child have, which ones do they have mastered where they're consistent, which ones might be emerging that we want to provide more support for them to expand their use of, and are they moving into the more abstract symbolic ways of representing some of those messages. So really important, not only for those communication goals and moving along that development of those communication language skills, but also for modeling. So if I wanted to do some modeling with the child's device, I'd want to know what are the messages that they're expressing that I can map the visual language onto. And in this case, I would do a greeting. And in the last case, I might say, don't want or not go or something like that. So it's really important to be able to make these observations. And as I said in the first part of the webinar, folks really struggle with interpreting gross actions, physical actions, body actions, movements, and assigning a communicative function or a message to those. And so it's a really important skill to be able to have when you're working or living with someone who might be communicating quite a bit using these methods, because the messages are still there. Those communicative functions are there. They're just present in a form that we may not be recognizing. Although I do find that family members often do this very naturally, this interpretation, and then I have to sort of probe, as I had said a while back. How do you know that? How do you know that he's not happy? How do you know that he doesn't like that or that he wants to do something? And that's when I get that information from the first column is exactly what the child has done. So let's take a look at a couple more. Okay, take a look and see what Chris is up to. Okay, so in this case, he's looking, he's smiling, he's waving his hands, almost clapping his hands, and I'm interpreting that to mean, look what I did, or I did it. He's not asking for anything, he's not rejecting anything. He's really doing this for purposes of social, like connecting with the person that's doing the filming. So I had attributed a social purpose to that. Okay, let's take a look and see what he's doing now. So what I observed was him sort of pulling the fishing rod toward himself and turning away from his sibling and moving away from his sibling. And I interpreted that to mean, don't touch it, don't take it, let me do it, or I want it, which is sort of a rejection of sharing, if you will. So he was, like his brother was sort of asking for it, and he was saying, no, no, you can't have it, it's mine. All right, let's see what Cole is up to. This may be a little hard to see because his actions are, the communicative component is towards the end, but I'll play it again and see if you can catch it. So what Cole was doing was tapping his mom's hand and sort of giving her the peg. And the interpretation that she had and that I had was that he was asking for assistance, he was asking for help, so he was making a request. And there's that opportunity piece, right? So mom didn't jump in and give him help until he initiated it, and then the next clip included her helping him out. All right, let's see what we have here with Emma. So what you don't hear is that there's music playing, which is probably significant. There's music in the background. So let me play that again, and then we'll see what function that served. Okay. So Emma reached out and took the arm of her peer, or sort of touched the arm of her peer, and then started dancing. So I interpreted that as her saying, I want you to dance with me, or dance, or that type of thing, which would be a request to, a specific, I want you to do a request for an action. All right, let's see what we have here. So two girls are reading, and I'll play that one again. You can see even with, very short clips, we can get good information. And in this case, this little girl was tapping the floor. And my interpretation and her mom's was she was saying, Mom, sit down, or sit here. And that was, again, a request for action. She wanted her mom to do something. And it's, a physical form, but it's a legitimate communicative function. play that one more time. So with this little guy, you can see his facial expression is sort of frowning and a furrowed brow, and my interpretation would be that this is not pleasant, or I don't like this, or that wasn't much fun. Um, and so it's not necessarily an intentional communicative act, but it is communicative in letting me know that this isn't something that he liked. And if you take that whole context into consideration with the slide, you can see where that would make sense, that he may be expressing that this isn't something that he liked. And I think this is our last clip. And in this one, I think there are multiple messages, so you may come up with something different than what I did, but we'll watch it one more time and then we can compare. Okay. So what I saw with Chris was him putting his hand on his dad's arm, and that seemed to be associated with the message that I want more to eat, or can I have some more, I'm hungry, which would be a request. But there were other facial expressions and body movements and things like that that you may have picked up on and interpreted as additional messages, which may very well be true. One of the things we do is, as I said, sometimes you have a collection of these observations in a chart and you look for patterns. You look for similar entries that you would see over time. Him, say for instance, Chris putting his hand on his dad's arm, and then him putting his hand on his mom's arm for something else, and then you would say, okay, we see a pattern of him using that to communicate, for the person to keep going with that action or something like that for a request. Okay, so we're going to take some questions right now before we finish up this webinar.